In 1941, as 3.8 million Axis troops shattered Soviet defenses and nearly 4,000 Soviet planes burned in a single week, Stalin signed off on something unthinkable. He approved an all-female regiment armed with wooden canvas crop dusters sent to strike German forces under cover of night. But what could make hardened German soldiers fear these women so much that they offered iron crosses for every plane shot down? The answer begins with one audacious woman and a race to save a nation. Marina Raskova's name was already known across the Soviet Union long before the war. In 1933, she became the first woman to qualify as a navigator in the Soviet Air Force, a milestone that shattered barriers in a field dominated by men. 5 years later, she set a new standard for courage and endurance, flying 4,000 miles in a converted DB-2 bomber and surviving a crash landing deep in the Siberian wilderness. News of her journey made headlines, and Raskova became a symbol of what Soviet women could achieve. Her celebrity status gave her a rare audience with Stalin himself, but she wanted more than medals or fame. As the German invasion tore through Soviet defenses in 1941, Raskova began writing directly to Stalin. Her letters did not plead for privilege, they demanded action. She argued that in a war for survival it was foolhardy to leave half the population, women, on the sidelines. She pressed the point relentlessly, insisting that if the Soviet Union truly believed in equality, then women must be allowed to fight, to fly, and to defend their country alongside men. Raskova's vision was not just about ideology, it was about necessity. The nation was bleeding and every capable hand was needed. Her persistence, reputation, and logic broke through where others had failed. Before the year was out, the Soviet government would answer her call, and history would bend in a new direction. On October 8, 1941, the State Defense Committee of the USSR issued a decree that changed the face of military aviation. The order, signed by Stalin, called for the creation of 3 new air regiments, each staffed entirely by women. Among them was the 588th Night Bomber Regiment, tasked with a mission unlike any other, to fly nightly harassment raids against German positions, denying enemy troops the chance to rest or repair under cover of darkness. This was not a symbolic gesture. The decree specified that pilots, navigators, mechanics, and armorers would all be women, making the 588th the first combat aviation unit in history with an all-female composition from the cockpit to the maintenance hangar. Major Marina Raskova was placed in charge of recruitment and organization, her authority backed by the highest level of government. The regiment's assignment was clear: operate under the cover of night, strike fast, and disappear before the enemy could respond. Their presence would be felt not by the size of their bombs, but by their persistence and unpredictability. The order set strict parameters. The 588th would fly missions designed to disrupt the enemy's ability to regroup, targeting supply lines, encampments, and infrastructure. Every aspect of the regiment, from its command structure to its nightly objectives, was defined by this unprecedented commitment to total mobilization. With the ink barely dry on Stalin's signature, the groundwork was laid for a new kind of warfare, one in which women would play a decisive and highly visible role on the front lines. The aircraft chosen for the 588th Night Bomber Regiment was a relic from another era. The Polikarpov Po-2, first designed in the late 1920s as a crop duster and flight trainer, looked out of place on a battlefield dominated by steel and speed. Its frame was built from wood and stretched canvas, with an open cockpit that left pilots exposed to the elements. Powered by a modest Shvetsov M11 engine, the Po-2 could barely reach 94 miles per hour at full throttle, slower than most cars on the highway. Fully loaded, it struggled to climb, carrying no more than 770 pounds of bombs. There were no radios for communication, no armor to shield against bullets, and in the early months, not even parachutes for the crew. The only weapon on board was often a single pistol tucked under the pilot's seat. Every technical manual, every maintenance log made clear this was a machine built for simplicity, not survival. Damage to the fabric wings could be patched with tape and glue, but a single tracer round could turn the plane into a torch in seconds. The Po-2's vulnerabilities were obvious to anyone who saw it on the ground, yet these shortcomings forced its pilots to invent new ways to survive. Each sortie demanded creativity, improvisation, and a willingness to fly straight into danger in a plane that, by all rights, should never have left the farm fields behind. Night after night, the 588th Regiment took off in planes that seemed to belong to another age. But the very weaknesses of the Polikarpov Po-2, its slow speed, wooden frame, and open cockpit, became the source of its greatest strength. The crews flew at treetop level, hugging the contours of rivers and forests, slipping beneath German radar and searchlights. When they neared a target, pilots cut their engines to idle, letting the plane glide silently through the dark. The only warning was a low, whistling rush of air over struts and wires, a sound German soldiers soon came to dread. In their letters home, Wehrmacht troops described this eerie approach as the sweeping of witches' brooms. The nickname caught on: Nachthexen, the night witches. The regiment's tactics were as ingenious as they were unnerving. Some crews acted as decoys, drawing searchlights and anti-aircraft fire, while others circled wide, engines off, ready to drop their bombs in the confusion. The Po-2's top speed was so low that German night fighters struggled to intercept them without stalling. Luftwaffe pilots complained in after-action reports that the biplanes seemed to vanish into the ground clutter. Downing a Night Witch became such a rare feat that the German High Command awarded Iron Crosses to those who managed it. Yet, for most on the ground, the real terror was the knowledge that sleep itself was now dangerous. Every night, the silence might break with the whistle of wings, and the Night Witches would strike again. On June 12, 1942, the 588th Night Bomber Regiment launched its first combat mission into the darkness over southern Russia. 10 crews, each separated by only 3 minutes, crossed 3 lines of German anti-aircraft fire. The squadron commander was lost before dawn. Maria Smirnova, once a village schoolgirl and flight instructor, was handed command on the spot, her hands shaking as she signed the night's first casualty report. In her letters, she confessed to fear so intense she could barely breathe, but there was no time for hesitation. Genya Rodneva, who had left behind a future in astronomy, scribbled in her diary, "I am living the happiest days of my life." For Irina Kasharina, survival meant improvisation. After an attack killed her pilot mid-flight, she gripped the controls with one hand and dragged her comrade's body clear with the other, guiding the battered Po-2 home through flak and searchlights. Each mission demanded everything they had. Every return was a victory measured in exhaustion and relief. Irina Sabrova flew 1,008 missions, more than any other pilot in the regiment. Each night demanded the same routine: fuel up, take off, and slip into the darkness. Sometimes they flew as many as 8 sorties before dawn. The pace never slowed, even as the front lines shifted west. In Belarus, Sabrova's crew landed in a forest clearing to refuel, only to realize camouflaged German tanks were hidden nearby. They scrambled for takeoff with barely enough fuel, escaping discovery by minutes. Over the course of the war, 261 women served in the regiment. 32 never returned, yet compared to the number of missions, over 23,000 sorties, the loss rate was lower than anyone expected. On May 4th, 1945, the Night Witches flew their final mission just 37 miles from Berlin. When the victory parade was held in Moscow, they were not invited. Officials said their Po-2 biplanes were too slow for a proper display. Years later, astronomers named an asteroid after Genya Rodneva, the young navigator who once dreamed of mapping the stars. For many, that tribute was the only official recognition they would ever receive. Today, women serve as combat pilots around the world, yet their stories still fight for recognition. The Night Witches proved that fear has no gender, and neither does courage. Every open cockpit and shattered barrier traces its lineage to nights when the impossible became inevitable. Their legacy still shadows every sky,